Big changes in La Belle Province. What's going on, everybody? Nick Alberga joined alongside Rory Boylen here in another edition of Sportsnet's NHL Power Rankings. Rory, if I were to tell you the Montreal Canadiens would be the first team to make a coaching change, what would you tell me?
If you had told me that 2 weeks ago, I would have said you're nuts, right?
Well,
I mean, you are nuts. We all know that. But that especially would have made it obvious because this team was a juggernaut at the start of the season. They began the year at the top of our tiers list here in the Cup contenders because they were so good. And then all of a sudden, everything caught up to them at once. And the underlying numbers suggested that some shooting percentage would come down. Their offense couldn't keep scoring over 4 goals a game, and that much was obvious. But it almost went in extreme the other direction. From the moment they played the Ottawa Senators of all teams in that 2-game set at the start of this month, that's when it started to snowball for the Montreal Canadiens. And shockingly, Claude Julien is the first coach to lose his job this year.
Hot take for me, time to start Jake Allen a bit more. Dominic Ducharme taking over on an interim basis for the Montreal Canadiens. We look now, Rory, at the Owen Power contenders list. A new submission this week, and it's in Canada, in the Vancouver Canucks. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know if that's a hot take, by the way, that Jake Allen should be getting more starts. But on Vancouver, I mean, finally had to do it, right? Like, even though they're playing better now, this might be the best hockey they played all year, ironically enough. They're still losing. And, you know, the final straw for me was the blown 3-0 lead they had to Edmonton. That was it. There's no getting back into the playoff race, I don't think, barring some absolutely incredible run here. I think it's time for Vancouver to start looking towards the trade deadline and start looking towards some asset management and maybe look at moving a Tanner Pearson, guys in the last year of their contract. I know they've been looking at maybe moving an Adam Gaudette or a Jake Virtanen, but what's the market really for those guys, especially with the cap being what it is? But maybe they need to get proactive there. They need to start thinking about draft picks. They need to start thinking about next year, not blowing it up in any huge way. I don't think they need to fire the coach. I don't think they need to fire the GM at this moment. But I think they do need to start thinking about accumulating draft picks and starting to think about this team next year now.
We love you, Canucks Twitter. That's all I'll say. We'll move on to the Mendoza line, another Canadian team in the form of the Calgary Flames dealing with some injury concerns right now. And the New Jersey Devils, they just have been inconsistent in when they're playing because of COVID so far this season.
Yeah, and New Jersey, I still kind of like them. They're going to go as far as Mackenzie Blackwood takes them, as we talked about last week. But a couple of losses to Buffalo will move you down a tier. And that's what happened to the Devils this week. Calgary, even though they got 3 or 4 points against Toronto, I don't really want to get too excited about that because the Leafs were really banged up. They played Michael Hutchinson in both of those games. Calgary has, as you mentioned there, some injury concerns of their own. They're going to go through this next little bit without Jacob Markstrom. But this next stretch of games over the next week and a half is crucial to the Calgary Flames season. 5 of the next 6 games are coming against the Ottawa Senators, who I wrote about on sportsnet.ca today, have had a really interesting relationship with the North Division so far this year. On some occasions, they've been the soft touch. They were the launching pad for the Edmonton Oilers to get their season going and become the hottest team in the NHL. They created a mirage for the Vancouver Canucks that looked like they were maybe turning around, but not so much. And they ended Claude Julien's tenure with the Montreal Canadiens. So, and right now, Ottawa seems to be playing their best hockey of the year. They've been hard to play against. They're 4-2-2 in the last little bit. I mean, they maybe are turning a corner. Matt Murray is a 900 save percentage goalie in the month of February after a disastrous January. So while Calgary has probably been looking ahead to this stretch of games for a while now, as this is the point. They haven't played Ottawa yet. This is the point where they need to be making up points in the standings. They're catching Ottawa at a good time, while Calgary might be a little banged up, and it might not be a good time for them.
You're right, and it seems like every week here in Canada, there's a new team where the sky's sort of falling, and it appears now it's the Montreal Canadiens. Last week, the Calgary Flames. The week before that, the Vancouver Canucks. Can only wonder who it is this upcoming week. We move on to the Prove Me Wrong tier, Rory, and again, it's getting rather packed, and enough great things can't be said about how wild the West Division has been so far this season.
I mean, it's crazy. I don't know how to wrap my head around some of these teams. So we're keeping Colorado in the Stanley Cup contenders tier for another week because, reputation, by points percentage, they're still third in that division. Like, nothing to me has changed considerably enough for the Colorado Avalanche to move them down or anything like that. But what's going on around them here? Like, by points percentage, the Minnesota Wild are now third in the West Division with a 4-game winning streak. Kirill Kaprizov has been incredible. And if you're not watching Minnesota Wild games because of their historical, precedent of being this boring team, I implore you to tune in and just watch this guy because he is absolutely worth the price of admission, so to speak. But also Los Angeles and Arizona. I mean, Los Angeles has now won 6 games in a row. We moved them up a tier last week when they won 3 in a row. They won another 3 in a row. They're really coming along, and Arizona is proving to be a bit of a tough team, although they do have a -3 goal differential overall. But that 7-game series win that they had against the Blues was notable. Also notable, though, that Darcy Kemper did leave Wednesday's game with a lower body injury, so we'll see what impact that has on them. But it's those 5 teams. Vegas is clearly the number 1, followed by Minnesota, Colorado, LA, and Arizona. Like, really compact there. St. Louis tossed them in there, too. It's not clear. Like, Vegas, Colorado, and St. Louis were supposed to separate, and there would be a race for 1 playoff spot. And now it looks like 2, or at least spots 3 and 4 could be up for grabs. A lot of surprises, and we'll see what's to come in the West. It is wild out there.
You just never know, especially in this peculiar NHL season. And contrary to popular belief, there is 3 other divisions in the NHL this season, as we know here in Canada. I want to wrap up with the St. Louis Blues. I guess no sympathies for all the injury concerns there for you.
Well, and I mean, that's part of why they're moving down, I think, here. I mean, they're getting hammered by the injury bug. Carl Gunnarsson now out for the season as well. But again, that lost 7-game series to Arizona kind of sits with me. The split that they had with San Jose this week, and then they dropped 2 to the Kings. I mean, it's just part of that whole division getting very interesting. So I didn't feel anymore that they deserved to be 2 tiers above LA and Arizona. They needed to come down. You need to consider those injuries and the long-term impact it could have. St. Louis could obviously get right back up in that cup contenders tier, but they are sliding, and I think these tier rankings need to reflect that.
Really is remarkable, Rory. Next week will be March. Can't wait for it. Thanks for this.
Unbelievable. See you next week, Nick.
There you have it. That's Rory Boylen. I'm Nick Alberga. This has been another edition of Sportsnet's NHL Power Rankings.